Alright, so this is how you do a brake pad change on a 2020 Toyota Camry. So first thing you want to do is go around and loosen the lug nuts on each of the wheels before you jack the car up off the ground. That way you're not fighting the wheels trying to turn when you're loosening the lug nuts. And then we'll jack it up, put it on jack stands. And then I like to use these rubber jack stand pads. The pinch weld on the unibody sits in there, keeps from scratching up any of the undercoating on the vehicle. Alright, to remove the front caliper and bracket, there's two 14mm bolts holding the caliper on. So there's one up top, one in the back. There's the bleeder screw, and then the brake line banjo bolt. So we'll take those out, and so this is when you have the caliper out of the way, you can access both of the brake pads on either side. They just pull out of here. These pads are new, but when you put your new pads in, you just replace the old ones. A lot of times the new pads will come with keepers, so you can change those out also. And then took the caliper off just for demonstration purposes, but so as the brake pad wears, the piston pushes out of the housing. So when you put your new pads on, it'll be thicker than where the piston's at, so you have to press the piston back into the housing. So you can use a tool like this, a piston spreader, or if you have a vise or a clamp of some sort, to squeeze the piston back in. You have to do that before the new pads, or before you can put the caliper back onto the new pads. Alright, and then on the rear, I went ahead and disconnected the caliper for demonstration purposes. But there's two 14mm bolts that hold it in to the caliper pins. There's an electrical connector. This is the electronic parking brake. Connects here on the top of the caliper. Probably disconnect that. I went ahead and unbolted the electronic parking brake so you could look at it. But you could just swing the caliper out of the way. There's a 14mm bolt here on the brake line. Loosen it, and that'll give you extra slack that we can set the caliper up, and it won't put any strain on the brake line. Once the caliper's out of the way, then you can get to both the brake pads and remove them, and keepers also. One thing that I always recommend is putting some blue Loctite on the bolts when you put them back together.